This isn't a breakup story. Breakups end with tears. What happened between Mark and me ended with silence. I didn't scream when I found out. I didn't confront him. I didn't even ask why. Because by the time the truth reached me, the question had already expired. What Mark did didn't destroy me. What destroyed him was what I chose not to do afterward. People think betrayal announces itself. It doesn't. It slips in quietly, through familiar voices, shared routines, and a trust that feels permanent. I trusted Mark with the kind of certainty you only give when you believe someone knows your limits and would never cross them. That belief didn't shatter in one moment. It cracked slowly. A change in tone, a guarded smile, a version of him that felt edited. This story isn't about revenge. It's about restraint, about what happens when a woman decides not to explain her pain, and how silence, when chosen deliberately, becomes colder than anger ever could. I didn't find out about Mark the way people imagine betrayal happens. There was no dramatic reveal, no confrontation that split the room in half. It began with a feeling, the kind you ignore because trusting someone means choosing not to listen to fear. Mark hadn't changed suddenly. That's what made it dangerous. He was still affectionate, still attentive, still saying my name the way he always had. But something underneath had shifted. He started protecting his phone like it held secrets instead of memories. Conversations ended the moment I entered the room. His explanations arrived too quickly, rehearsed, polished, unnecessary. I noticed all of it. I just didn't accuse him. Women don't miss patterns. We postpone accepting them. One night, while he slept beside me, his phone lit up. A name I'd heard before, too often. Clara. The message wasn't explicit. That's what made it worse. It assumed familiarity, comfort, history. I didn't wake him. I didn't cry. I sat there, heart steady, reading backward, dates aligning, timelines collapsing, moments reassembling themselves into something unmistakable. It wasn't just cheating, it was maintenance, carefully managed lies, just enough honesty to keep me calm, just enough affection to keep me close. I understood then, this hadn't started recently. It had been happening while he held my hand, while he planned trips, while he told me I was overthinking. That word echoed in my head. Overthinking. A word men use when they're afraid a woman is thinking clearly. I put the phone down exactly where it was, returned to my side of the bed, and lay there listening to his breathing. He slept peacefully. That hurt more than the messages, because it meant betrayal hadn't cost him rest. By morning, I had everything: proof, screenshots, context, enough to destroy him socially, enough to make him explain himself to people who mattered. I imagined it, the confrontation, the collapse, his voice shaking as he realized how badly he'd underestimated me. But something unexpected happened. I didn't feel angry, I felt embarrassed. Not because he chose someone else, but because he believed I wouldn't notice. Because he thought love made me stupid. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as someone who hurt me and started seeing him as someone who had miscalculated. And people who miscalculate are most dangerous when they don't know it yet. I didn't confront Mark. That choice confused even me. Every instinct told me to react, to demand answers, to force honesty out of a man who had carefully avoided it. But something colder took over. I watched him instead. Silence gives you time, and time reveals habits people don't realize they have. Mark noticed the change within days. I stopped asking where he was going, stopped checking the clock when he came home late, stopped correcting small inconsistencies in his stories. I became neutral. That neutrality unsettled him. Guilt needs resistance to survive. Without it, it turns inward. He started over-explaining, offering details I never asked for, creating alibis for events that hadn't yet been questioned. "Nothing's going on," he'd say casually. I'd nod. That nod became unbearable, because agreement without reassurance feels like accusation. I didn't change my routines dramatically. I changed my energy. I stopped orbiting his moods, stopped adjusting myself to make him comfortable. Instead, I redirected that attention inward, not toward healing, but toward detachment. I rewrote my boundaries in silence. No more emotional labor. No more giving him access to my reactions. Mark began watching me closely, studying my expressions, waiting for the outburst he deserved but never received. He asked if I was angry. "No," I said. It was true. Anger requires hope, and hope had already left the room. The more composed I became, the more erratic he grew. He picked unnecessary fights, searched for proof that I still cared enough to be hurt. But I didn't give him that. Silence isn't absence, it's pressure, and under pressure, people reveal themselves. He started checking my phone, asking questions with forced casualness, accusing me of being distant. Projection always sounds like concern. I let him talk. Listening without responding is an underrated form of control. He didn't know what I knew, and that uncertainty gnawed at him. Because as long as I stayed silent, every outcome remained possible, and the mind always chooses the worst one. By the end of that month, Mark was exhausted, not from lying, but from waiting for confrontation, waiting for consequences. They never came, and that was when I understood. I didn't need to expose him. I just needed to let him live with the version of me he could no longer read. The truth didn't come out because I pushed it. It surfaced because lies can't survive indefinite silence. Mark made the mistake guilty people always make. He started talking to the wrong person. A mutual friend noticed inconsistencies, dates that didn't line up, stories that changed depending on the audience. Questions were asked, not by me. That mattered, because when truth appears without your involvement, no one can accuse you of manipulation. Mark realized something was shifting before he understood why. He grew restless, agitated. One night, he asked me directly if I was hiding something. I met his eyes calmly. "No," I said. That answer terrified him more than a scream would have. Because silence doesn't deny. It waits. A week later, the conversation he'd been avoiding forced itself into existence. He came home late, didn't remove his jacket, didn't sit down. His voice wasn't angry, it was careful. "I know you know," he said. I didn't ask how, I didn't ask what he meant. "I've known for a while," I replied. That was the moment his confidence collapsed. He expected rage, tears, a negotiation. Instead, he was facing calm certainty. He started explaining how it started, why it didn't mean anything, how he never planned for it to go this far. I let him speak, not because I needed answers, but because I wanted to remember how powerless dishonesty sounds when it no longer controls the room. When he finished, he waited for forgiveness, for a reaction. I gave him nothing. "I don't hate you," I said finally. "I just don't recognize you anymore." That sentence ended us. Not dramatically, permanently. I didn't pack that night. I didn't slam doors. I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. By morning, I was already gone. No note, no explanation. And that absence became the loudest thing he'd ever experienced. In the weeks that followed, Mark unraveled quietly. Not publicly, not in a way anyone could point to, but privately, where accountability hurts most. He reached out, apologized, tried to reclaim the version of me he thought he deserved. I didn't respond, because closure is a privilege, not a right. And by the time he understood that, it was already too late. I wasn't angry. I was unreachable. Here's what no one tells you about silence. It doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels empty. There's no moment of victory, no public acknowledgement that you were right, no scene where everyone finally understands what you survived. Just space. And in that space, something irreversible happens. You stop waiting. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never fix anything. You stop needing explanations from people who already showed you the truth. That's when detachment settles in. Not bitterness, not hatred, indifference. I didn't ruin Mark's life. I didn't need to. I removed myself from it. And when someone loses access to you, your emotions, your reactions, your forgiveness, they lose the version of themselves that depended on your presence. That's the quiet consequence no apology can undo. Some people think revenge is about damage. It isn't. It's about distance. And distance, once established, doesn't negotiate. If this story felt uncomfortably calm, if you expected anger and got control instead, then you already understand. This channel isn't about drama. It's about power that doesn't announce itself. Stories where silence isn't weakness, where walking away isn't losing, and where the coldest endings are the ones with no final words. If you're done with loud pain and ready for quiet strength, subscribe. Not for chaos, not for closure, but for stories that teach you how to disappear without ever being forgotten.